Welcome to Part 5, Section 2 of the free NCE study guide. For the best learning experience, pause the video after each question to think through your answer, then press play to check yourself. You may also want to pause on the answer slide to jot down notes.
How would you describe an authoritative or democratic approach to parenting? How would you describe an indulgent or permissive style of parenting? How would you explain an indifferent or uninvolved parenting style? How is attachment between an infant and a parent or caregiver defined? What did Pavlov learn about how conditioned responses are formed? How would you describe feminist theory? How would you explain the person in environment, pie, theory? How can a family be defined? How would you define a nuclear family? How would you describe an extended family? How would you define a single-parent family structure? How would you describe a blended family? How would you define a household? How would you define family violence? What did Anna Freud suggest about how defense mechanisms function? What leads to color blindness? How is Weber's law defined? How is Fechner's law defined? How would you explain synesthesia? How would you define the causal informational observation level? How would you describe the guided observation level? How would you explain the clinical observation level? What were the findings of the Seattle longitudinal study regarding how intelligence changes throughout adulthood? What is the difference between crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence?
You have reached the end of Part 5, Section 2. You can now move on to Part 5, Section 3, where we'll continue to explore theories and how they guide intake, assessment, and diagnosis.